Hey guys, hope all of you are doing fine. This is the part 5 of the Being Reborn in Marvel with Gamer's ability. Marvel Gamer Part 5. After 2 hours discussing with Hank Pym about stocks and how much I could offer him, we came to an agreement for a 10% of the company on the grounds he would stay until his retirement, which was more than good for me. After that, we discussed his salary and benefits, and closed the deal with me showing him the company, and him firing all my scientists. Not that I cared really, there were your run-of-the-mill scientists, while Hank Pym was a god-tier scientist. After that, I left Hank to his own leisure, where he would find and recruit his own group of people he trusted, while I went back home, to continue on my research of the super soldier serum. Later I would do some dungeons, but right now, I wanted to focus on my research, especially now that I had a genius in my company devising ways to make me money, meaning I had more free time. Let's see, I muttered, as I went over the blood samples I had in my personal lab, when all of the sudden, my phone rang. Tilda, it's me motherfucker, it's me, Tilda. I turned to look at my phone knowing very well who was calling, Fury. Hello, I said, taking the call. Alex, I need your help, Fury said, his tone sounding serious. What is it? I asked. Promptly Fury began to explain what was going on. Seemingly some enemy spies had infiltrated the country without S.H.I.E.L.D. noticing and all with all the events happening right now, and had stolen some cognitive data from the North Institute, a S.H.I.E.L.D. base that was once secretly run by Hydra a few hours ago. And he needed me to track the spies, and recover the date, for the spies had burned the place down. Sure. Count on me, I replied, after he finished his explanation. I know I can, Fury replied, sounding a bit happier. Opening a portal to North Institute, I stepped into a scorched view. They really had burned the entire place down. Taking a deep breath, I started to look for some clues, something that would lead me to the spies. Using sight with my satellite, I focused on finding the closest red dots on the world map, in relation to the base, for it would inevitably lead me to my targets. 2 minutes in, I found 3 red dots somewhere in the suburbs of Ohio. 2 were relatively close, a few meters away, while 1 was driving towards them. This feels familiar, I muttered, as I felt the distinctive feeling of déjà vu crawling down my spine. Shrugging the feeling off, I opened a portal close to their location, in a rather desolate area, the forest nearby. Stepping out of the portal, I whistled in appreciation. The trees, the smell of the earth, the birds chirping, and the feeling of total solitude, brought back some memories. It's like the day I came to this world. I chuckled. Granted, that time I was naked, and felt helpless. Now, helpless would be the last word I would use to describe myself. Getting out of memory lane for the moment being, I went back to focus, for I had a mission to do. Now, let's pick a red dot and see what this is all about, I muttered to myself, eventually deciding to pick the closest red dot to me. Walking out of the forest, I entered the residential area without raising any suspicion, from the oblivious people living around, as the nurturing rays of sunlight bathed my eyes with blinding love. God, I need to stop working on the lab so much, or at least I need to do more shit during the day. I feel like a vampire, I hissed, my eyes burning at the sudden change of light. Okay, time to find the spies, and recover the data, I sighed, walking towards the moving red dot that was conveniently moving towards me at a moderate speed. Eventually the red dot reached my location, and to say I was surprised was an understatement. The red dot was a girl about 10 to 11 years old, cycling down the streets of the suburban area with her bike, without a care for the world as she smiled at everyone around, a smile I knew as fake, fabricated, a trained smile. A girl is my target, I muttered, inspecting the girl. At a simple glance as she passed by me, I could tell she was wearing shorts, and a yellow and white top. Her hair was brown, with the majority of it being dyed to pale blue. Natasha Romanov LV17. It wasn't until the girl had passed by, that I had finally noticed her name, Natasha freaking Romanov. Fuck. I sighed, already knowing I would get invested, emotionally speaking, with all of this. I followed Natasha through the area, hiding in the shadows as I did so. While I thought about how to approach this, eventually as I pondered about this, Natasha cycled into the driveway of a home, where the other red dot was. Hiding on the top of a tree, I used sight to see what Natasha was doing. For the moment I would simply observe. Putting her bike down, she smiled as she walked into the yard of the house, whistling, and then it clicked me, I had seen this before, which now explained the sense of déjà vu. The girl, aka Natasha, the base being burned, all made sense now. This was the origin story of Natasha, a movie I never got to watch till the end, just the beginning, ergo why I felt so lost. In the yard of the house, a younger girl around 4 to 5 years old played on the swings, smiling as she heard Natasha whistled, eventually whistling back at her. Yelena Belova LV1. Well, that confirms it. These are the events of the Black Widow movie, or at least the beginning. And more importantly, I was about to fuck canon. If there was something I had learned from my time in Hydra was that everyone deserved a choice in life, so I was going to lend the girls under the Red Room a helping hand. I was going to fuck the Russian government. From the top of one of the many trees outside little Natasha's house, I waited, hiding in the shadows, as I formulated a plan to deal with this whole situation. All while Natasha and Yelena played around like two little kids, it was like seeing two sides of the same coin. One was obliviously happy, and the other, well, not so much. Normally, I wouldn't need a plan for such a situation. I was vastly overtrained for this little raid, but my mission had changed the moment I had discovered kids were on the line. In truth, before today, I had completely forgotten about the Red Room, but now that I had remembered, well, I just couldn't let things play out as they should, so for now, Fury and his data would have to wait. Sighing, I turned my attention to the house. Inside the house, there was a woman, the other red dot in the area. She was level 29, and was currently cooking some dinner, playing her role perfectly. The typical suburban middle-class wife, waiting for her husband. Girls, let's come inside, dinner's ready. Melina Vostokov LV29. Food. Yelena exclaimed, with a toothy smile. Did you make the corn we bought yesterday? Natasha asked, with a significantly lower amount of enthusiasm, but even then, her eyes laid on Melina with love. She cared for her, even if this entire thing was a lie. Yes, now, come on, Dad is about to get home. Melina repeated, pushing both girls inside the house delicately. Well, this made my whole bursting through the window plan go to shit. If she cared about Melina, I had to play this carefully. Hurting Melina would scar both girls for life, making them my and by connection Emily's enemies. Though for now, even if I didn't care about making enemies out of them, doing a Kool-Aid move was out of the window, as ironic as that is, because I was still waiting for that last red dot, that was now a mile away. Shrugging those thoughts for the moment, I jumped out of the tree as I casted a low-tier illusion spell around me to render myself invisible. Then, I walked behind the girl like Hydra had taught me, making no sound as I followed them inside the house. God, I felt like a creep. Inside the house, I started to scrutinize the rooms one by one, while keeping tabs on everyone around. Surprisingly, the inside of the house was rather normal, with the normal amount of weapons expected in an American household. Here it comes, I muttered to myself, as the last red dot finally arrived. Dad! Yelena shouted, filled with excitement. The cry of happiness was so hard, I heard her from the second floor of the house. Sighing, I walked out of the room I was inspecting and walked into the kitchen, as the fake family started to gather around. The man, who was the last red dot, was nervous. His whole body language said that much. Something, not only I, but Natasha and Melina noticed, leaving only little Yelena in the dark. Alexei Alanovich Shostakov LV95. Well, ain't that interesting? The guy level is close to the hundreds. Well, not that it matters. Knowing what would happen next, I walked out of the house through the front door the man had graciously left open, and hopped above their SUV, where I comfortably took a seat atop of the car, using my telekinesis to avoid making a mark on it, also to hold on to it. 5 minutes later, the family walked out of the house, all in a hurry, with Natasha and Yelena being the first ones to enter the SUV. Then on the garage both Alexei and Melina stood still, having a conversation about the mission for what it looked like, with the man showing Melina a floppy disk. At times I forget the USB has yet to come, such dark times we live in. Soon after their short-lived conversation about their mission, Alexei and Melina hopped into the car and drove away with both me and the girls, as multiple police cars came into the scene driving into their house, their sirens wailing, which made me curse internally, for every single police car was under shield, meaning it was all a faked, which also meant Fury had discovered something after our talk and hadn't say shit, our talk, though who really cared? Where are we going? I heard little Yelena ask. Home. Melina replied with a rather somber tone. Perhaps she was worth saving, something to debate on later. Mommy, you're silly. Yelena giggled. We just left home. Such is the innocence of the youth, such a fragile treasure. 3 hours later, the sun was already down, and I was still sitting above their SUV, cursing their slow method of transportation. At least the air was nice. I can see why dogs like to feel the air on their faces. Eventually the SUV turned into a cornfield driving towards a bunch of hangars. Needless to say, I jumped off the car, the illusion still in play as I walked towards the play hiding beneath one of the hangars. As multiple SHIELD agents approached the scene, by my calculations they would be here in a minute or two. So far, everything was playing according to the small part of the movie I had watched, though from this point on, I had no idea what would happen next, but considering there was a plane, I assumed they were about to fly that shit up, so once again, I use my telekinesis to cling into the plane without actually letting weight affect the plane, as I stood above the plane. Get in, Alexei said in a hurried tone, turning around as many cars started to arrive in the area. As for me, well, I took this chance to levitate the floppy disk he had stolen out of his pocket into my inventory, replacing the thing for a drink coaster of the same size Bucky had gotten me from a gas station. Sneaky. Floppy disk, disgusting really. With everyone but Alexei in the plane, Melina started the plane, as Alexei ran towards the metal trailer blocking the way, effortless flipping the thing over, and now I understood why his level was so high. He was a super soldier. God damn it, it seems they now sell the serum in your local market shop or something. Maybe I should also get a blood sample for him, it could help me in the long run. With the plane running, the action started with SHIELD that had just arrived, and Alexei shooting at each other, with me slightly deviating the bullets that came my way with my telekinesis. I had to admit, So far, Alexei was doing great, keeping up with the plane at foot, while shooting his rifle with incredible precision. The real question now was, what to do? I could interfere, capture them all, and offer both Natasha and Yelena asylum, or I could see where they were trying to escape and get the man responsible for the entire Red Room situation. I mean, I knew that with my satellite I could eventually locate them. The problem was that all of fucking Russia was red in my minimap, which would make the hunt considerably tiring. Ah! Melina screamed, breaking me out of my long reverie. On one of the wings, Alexei clung into the plane, shooting at the SHIELD agents coming their way. I really had to stop daydreaming about my plans. A lot of shit happened, and I didn't notice. With Melina slowly dying, Natasha had no other option but to grab the wheel and fly the plane to Cuba, which took a long-ass time. Again, I think I was getting pampered by the portals. Medics! Alexei shouted, carrying the wounded Melina in his arms, as both Natasha and Yelena followed their fake mother with tears in their eyes as their fake father laid her on a stretcher. After that, Alexei walked back to the plane as a few soldiers walked towards Melina to treat her wounds. "Forgive me, Mom," Natasha said in fluent Russian, tears falling from her eyes in pure pain. She was not acting, she really cared about Melina, she really loved her. "The Red Guardian returns," I heard someone say, drawing my attention. With Alexei, a rather fat man walked to Alexei with a smile on his face, his arms stretched as he approached the Russian super soldier to hug him, then with 2 kisses on the cheek, he grinned at Alexei. "General Dreykov LV-22. Please General, no more undercover jobs." Alexei sighed. "I need to get back in the action, I need my suit," he added, with a tired smile. "Did you get it?" the general asked, his eyes on Alexei like 2 piercing hollow windows with no emotion. Alexei smiled, handing the general the drink coaster. "What?" he muttered, realizing what he had given to the general. "Is this a joke?" the general asked, his tone dangerously low. I know I have it," Alexei replied, checking every pocket on his jacket. As this hilarious event happened, the soldiers took Melina into a truck, making Yelena cry, who in turn rushed to her father figure looking for some type of comfort only to be stopped by one of the soldiers, who grabbed the little girl by the hand like a sack of potatoes. Angry at this, Natasha ran towards the man, kicking the hand holding her sister, while also disarming the soldier with surprising ease. "Get away from her!" Natasha growled, aiming the gun at everyone around, her eyes gleaming dangerously. "I will kill you all, don't touch her!" she roared once again. With sigh, I walked towards Natasha, the illusion still in place as I equipped my armor, for it was the time to intervene. "Honey!" Alexei called, as he approached Natasha, who in turn aimed her gun at him. "Hand me the gun." Natasha looked at him, her eyes watering even more. "I don't want to go back there," she cried, looking at Alexei with pleading eyes. "I wanna stay in Ohio." "You know you can't," Alexei replied, slowly walking towards her. "You can't take her, she's too young," Natasha muttered, feeling hopeless. "And they won't," I replied, breaking the spell, as I stood in front of the girls. My sudden appearance shocked the people around me, who in turn changed their focus to me, as Natasha and Yelena looked at me with a vast array of emotions. Immediately the Russian soldiers started to circle me, as Natasha aimed at me with her gun. In her eyes, I could see she was scared, terrified, not only of me but of everything around. "Sorry girls, but this is a non-compliance rescue," I boomed, making sure everyone around heard my voice. "Who are you?" Alexei asked, his eyes like daggers wanting to pierce my heart. I looked at him, tilting my head slightly to the right, my eyes gleaming with fake enthusiasm. I am a man out of this world. I chuckled. A man out of time, that's what you are, Alexei snarled, and as if on cue, the soldiers around started shooting at me. However, their bullets never reached me, not because of the armor, that was just a show, made to create fear. But because my telekinetic shield stopped the projectiles from reaching me. Girls. Time to sleep. Ignoring the Russian soldiers and their bootleg version of Captain America, I turned around, patting Natasha on the head, who simply froze at my touch. Sleep, I muttered, using my magic to put them to sleep. You bastard! Alexei roared, springing at me. A fruitless attack, one that I stopped by taking a step forward, shoving my hand to his throat, immobilizing him with a death grip. Me. The bastard. You help your government force children into slavery, and you call me the bastard. Alexei gagged, his hands clutching the arm that pushed him down with all his might as he tried to reply. Still, my hand around his neck made the entire ordeal an impossibility. You are the Baba Yaga. I heard someone mutter in realization, and much to my shock, it was General Dreykov, who was looking at me like I was the devil himself. Baba Yaga. I snorted. I ain't no John Wick. But I can see why you make that connection. I chuckled, tossing Alexei into one of the planes like a rag doll. I heard about you, the man that destroyed Hydra, the demon with human skin. That was what the Russians were calling me. The Baba Yaga. Terrible name, but I suppose it's best to be feared than loved by those people. That's not untrue. I nodded, opening a portal to one of the safe rooms in New York to keep both Natasha and Yelena safe and away from Emily, for now. I didn't trust Natasha not to try and kill Emily out of fear or shock. I won't let you hurt them. Alexei shouted, jumping out of the plane I had hurled him into. Enraged by that comment, I pulled his body towards me with my telekinesis as I jumped towards him, digging my left hand into his torso, piercing him with relative ease. Hurt them? You did that yourself, you lied to them, you took away their lives, their freedom, you could have saved them, but you didn't, all for the sake of this accursed man. Pathetic, really. I snarled, pulling my hand out of his guts as his body collapsed to the ground with a look of shock on his face. As I did this, the general made a run for it, trying to escape me. Turning around, I walked away from Alexei's body as the blood from his wound started to make a pool, reaching the girls to gently levitate them into the safe room. Then, I closed the portal and turned to the general, who was now barely reaching the car. But as he tried to open the door, I levitated the whole thing, throwing it into the sea. Then I started walking towards him, snapping the necks of those around me with my telekinesis as I slowly made my way towards him. I will give you one chance and one only. Tell me everything you know about the Red Room, and I may be lenient, granting you a quick death. Baba Yaga or not. I won't betray my country. The general roared, his hands shaking with fear as he pulled his gun, aiming at me. Then, with a grin, he moved the gun to his head and pressed the trigger. Alas, nothing happened. Smiling, I clapped my hands as I continued my stroll towards him. I respect that, I really do. Fear sipping into the little courage he had gained, he started to press the trigger of his gun over and over again, but each time, the gun did nothing but a cute little click sound. What is going on? He muttered. Oh well, you know how it is. I chuckled, tossing a few bullets into the ground, bullets I had stolen from his gun using a port. Without those, a gun is nothing but a piece of art or paperweight. Impossible. He muttered, taking a step back as I neared him. Improbable maybe, not impossible. I smiled, putting my hands on his shoulders. Now, let's have a one-on-one. I grinned. Let's hear you sing, little bird, for I want to know all your little secrets. And so, I dragged the man to a room I would never allow Emily to see as long as I could avoid it, the room that showed how much Hydra had changed me, the room that proved a part of me was a monster, my torture room. Natasha Romanov POV. After that armored man put us to sleep with a simple command, I woke up in a room with a single door and a TV with Yelena by my side. And a part of me wondered, was this really the escape I had been wishing for, the escape from that life, or was that man a bigger monster I needed to fear? You can come out if you want. I heard someone say from the other side of the door. Alex sent you here to keep you safe, so don't worry. Don't worry, that was something I didn't have the privilege of doing. Who are you? I asked, glancing at Yelena. My name is James Buchanan, but everyone calls me Bucky. He replied, opening the door. Now come, I made you some food. I'm not hungry, I muttered. The man looked strong, very strong, just like this Alex that rescued us. Then don't eat. He shrugged, closing the door. Torture log, time equals 0:01 and 9 seconds. The subject woke up in my torture room with a disoriented look on his face, fear and anger being the two emotions he presented. His heartbeat was above the average levels of a man of his age, which was a good indicator for what I was about to do. Granted, the elevated pressure could also be attributed to his unhealthy lifestyle. I think I will start him with a simple method of torture. Beating him up. Torture log, time equals 0:35 and 15 seconds. The subject has yet to reveal anything. He had a relatively strong will, most humans would have broken by now, doing anything in their power to stop the pain, but he was not. He was afraid, yes, but he was keeping his mouth shut. It was almost admirable. Changing the method of torture to amputations. This method promises better results. It usually works best on men. Torture log, time equals 4:01 and 9 seconds. I have amputated the subject's arms, legs, and reproductive parts, slicing them like ham while keeping him conscious. Remarkably, the subject has yet to break. Perhaps asking Charles to read his mind would be best, but a part of me didn't want this game to end. It was empowering. The lines between the kind dad and the monster I was forced to become blurry in this room. Changing method of torture to boiling. Torture log, time equals 8:41 and 59 seconds. Boiling the subject for 4 hours whilst barely keeping him alive with my powers worked. I suppose the constant input of pain did wonders for his stability, finally breaking him down. Pleading for his death, a quick one, he sang with detail about the Red Room operation, telling me everything I needed to know. A quick check with my satellite map to the locations he gave me proved he was being truthful. I even completed a quest that had started during his torture, find out the Red Room locations and how they operate. I even got a few levels on torture for what I did to him, a rewarding day of work. Log end. Alex Walker POV. 8 hours of torture later, and I finally had the information I needed. So, I acted accordingly, visiting each base and killing the operatives in cold blood. It was easy. Unlike Hydra, the Red Room had a few bases, a dozen, so killing all the soldiers and the workers made for an easy quest. However, while eliminating the Red Room had been an absurdly easy task, what came next was not. For now, I had a few dozen girls, some as young 2 years old and others as old as 17. It was a rather difficult situation, 61 girls, some utterly loyal to their government, others happy for what I did. It was a very delicate situation. So, I did the only thing I could, allowing those who wanted to be enslaved, be slaves, for only those who crave freedom can truly attain it. Which left me with, in its majority, with the youngest girls. 51 girls. Not a bad exchange, with only 10 girls leaving to serve their oppressors. As for the ones that stayed with me, well, I had to be honest, I had no idea what to do with them. So, empty of ideas, I bought an empty orphanage in England with the help of Fury, where the girls would reside for now until they were adopted. The orphanage would be run by S.H.I.E.L.D. and me to avoid the girls becoming S.H.I.E.L.D.'s slaves. Well, not that they had much to offer, for the majority, their training hadn't even started. Needless to say, I would pay for the whole thing and would continue to pay until all the girls were safe. Giving the girls a normal life, at least as normal as they could get on the orphanage. As to why it was on England, well, it was to avoid Russia blaming the USA for the attack I had orchestrated. Not that they would, S.H.I.E.L.D. was not on top of that. I had to cash a few favors to have them be in charge though. The current director was not happy with my course of action, but was happy with the results, for no Red Room meant no super spies, according to him. "The girl wants to talk with you," Bucky said as he entered my office. "Which one?" I asked, looking at him. "The big one," Bucky replied, as I gave him a look that said, "Humanize them, give them a name." "She doesn't want to share her name." "I suppose, in a way, a name holds power." "Okay." I sighed, opening a portal to their room. "Hi." Yelena looked at me in fear, while Natasha looked at me like she was still trying to figure out how she felt about me, though considering she still appeared like a red dot on my map, I think it's safe to say she is not my friend yet. "Why did you do that?" Natasha asked, her eyes scanning me like a cat looking for the right moment to strike. "Enter the room with a portal. Or saving you?" I knew very well what she was asking. She wanted to know why I had saved her, but I wanted to make small talk. "Saving us, me," Natasha replied as Yelena clung to her tight. "I was once like you, well, not like you." I started trying to put words to what had happened to me. "I was kidnapped by an organization much like the one you used to belong to, but unlike the Red Room, mine was arguably much worse. I managed to escape, I managed to win my freedom back. So, I suppose you can say I sympathize with you." "What will happen to us?" Natasha asked after a moment of silence. "You could stay here and live a normal life if that's what you want," I replied, with just the hint of a smile. "Or, you could go with your sister to my orphanage and wait to be adopted. I really don't know, the choice is yours, that's the beauty of freedom." "What happened to the Alexei?" Natasha asked, her voice going soft. "We fought," I replied, scratching the back of my head. This was a tough topic. How do you tell someone you impaled the closest thing they have to a dad? "You killed him," Natasha muttered, which made Yelena cry. "No, he was still alive when I left the area, and considering his constitution, he will live," I said, trying to placate the girls. "I mean, I really didn't know if the guy had survived. Perhaps he did, perhaps he didn't, it all came to how good was his super soldier body. I don't want to be here. I want to be with mommy and daddy," Yelena cried. How to explain to a child his mommy and daddy had sold her to slavery? "The choice is yours, Natasha, whatever it is you pick, I will support you." "Could I really live a normal life?" Natasha muttered, looking at me with hope, fragile hope. "Normal is a wide range." I sighed. Life in this world is never truly normal, but we can make the best of it. Natasha sighed, I won't ever be truly free of them. Right. I looked at the 11-year-old girl and said, we are never truly free of our demons, but no, they won't ever control you again. I mean, they would have to kill me first. Let's face it, very few can accomplish that, and none of them live in Russia. I wanna stay, for now, Natasha muttered, and just like that, her dot changed from red to yellow, aka neutral. Then, welcome to the family. Destroying the Red Room in Russia was just step one. Organizations like these usually had roots all over the world, that much had become evident when I tortured the general. And while a bit of extra torture would have made him more chatty about the operations outside Russia, I had no need for him anymore. After all, I had all the data I needed to update my search parameters with the information he had shared during our one-on-one and with what little I had collected through my raids in their bases. Eventually, I would kill them all, but I didn't have to do it by myself. Bucky had taken this mission after hearing the facts and was raiding a base a day. It was easier than hunting Hydra, that much was a given. For one, the Red Room didn't have as much global presence as Hydra, and they weren't in every country, just some, like Cuba, North Korea, China, Italy, and others. The point was, I was leaving the clean duty to Bucky, as in cleaning the other countries from that despicable organization. As for me, well, I was trying to connect with the girls. One distrusted me because of her training, the other, well, because in her world, I had ripped her from her parents, making me a monster in her eyes. But time would fix that, or one day I would wake up to see Yelena trying to kill me. I suppose I will see. What do you want, Natasha? I said, feeling her presence behind my slightly open office door. Nothing. She eventually replied. It can't be entertaining to watch me read documents, I replied with a chuckle. What can we do? She asked, coming into my office. Looking at her, I put the documents I was reading on the desk and asked. What do you want to do? She froze, contemplating the question. I told you, you are free now, I winked. Well, as free as a child your age should be, I added. Can we go to school? She asked, her voice soft. You can, Yelena. Well, I don't know. I sighed, a girl shouting I had kidnapped her would certainly break my public persona. She will forget them. Eventually. She replied, as I gave her a look that said, really? Maybe. Look, if you want to go to school, I can enroll you. I sighed. But, Yelena is. She another matter altogether. She looked at me and, with a low tone, muttered. I know. I really don't know what to do with your sister. For her, life was normal before me, the realities you lived are foreign to her. I sighed, this entire thing was a broken mess. I will tell her. She stated. She has the right to know what would have happened had you not been there. She paused, her gaze turning down. Had you not interfered? Well, if she's gonna believe someone, I bet it's you. I smiled. So, about school, you really want that? Yes. She nodded shyly. Okay, I replied. She looked at me and allowed a tiny smile on her face. So, next order of business. Your training. I said, looking at her. At this, she tensed. Don't worry, I don't mean like the Red Room, I mean like you need to be able to defend yourself. I clarified. I would still be allowed to have friends. She asked. Nat, but of course, you can have as many friends as you like. I chuckled. We can even plan some sleepovers. I winked. The self-defense training is only to help you be truly free. Truly free? She asked. Those who are weak and good tend to be the prey of those who are strong and bad. The only way to escape that cycle is by climbing that ladder, in short. Those who hold the power, hold the cards of their own destiny. I answered. So to be free, I need to be strong. She stated. Yes, I mean, look at those who we call normal, I said. They can become rich, they can become poor, they can be doctors or cops, but at the end of the day, people like Hydra, or S.H.I.E.L.D., or even the Red Room, are the ones pulling the strings, the ones that get to decide what happens. I sighed. They don't have control over their own lives, and they don't even know it. She added in understatement. Yes, in a way that is true. I nodded. At any given time, those at the top could simply end them, which is why power is such an important part of freedom. With power, you can truly be free. She looked at me, giving me a long scrutinizing look. Are you free? She eventually asked. I suppose I am. I chuckled. By the Earth Power ladder, I was free, but outside the Earth Power ladder, well, I was not. Melina Vostokov. I woke up to find Alexei on the bed recovering from what the doctors described as impalation. Not only that, but the one who had impaled him had kidnapped Natasha and Yelena and had seemingly wiped the Red Room out of Russia. Alexei, I muttered, approaching his bed. Doctors were saying that even with his super soldier body, the chances of him surviving were slim. He was right, you know. Alexei coughed. What? I asked, holding his hand. We claimed to love them, and yet we allowed our country to hurt them. Alexei chuckled with a hoarse tone. It is our duty, I replied. I suppose as long as we say that, the bodies of children piling behind us won't matter, won't it? Alexei chuckled. I almost died, and perhaps I will, and almost dying helped me see, it granted me an epiphany of sorts. How can we claim to love someone, when we only hurt them? Our duty to our country, our love for them, two different things playing at once. To die for duty or to die for love? I don't know. I eventually replied. It took me a week to get all the papers I needed to enroll Natasha in the same school Emily was attending. It was a bit complicated. I was never a big guy on paperwork, but Fury helped. So there she was, Natasha Walker, going to the most prestigious school in all of New York. Of course, to do this, I had to introduce Emily to Natasha, which went as one would expect, with Emily being the social butterfly she was, immediately taking a liking to Natasha. Natasha, naturally, was a bit uncomfortable with the open display of friendliness Emily presented when I introduced the two. But, all and all, she was okay with it, I think, just not used to it. I mean, she was used to kids liking her without knowing her past because she was trained to make others like her, but Emily. She knew of her past and still liked her. Granted, Emily likes everybody. Anyway. Emily was in grade 2, while Natasha was in grade 5, and both had a few extracurricular activities before going to their other activities to prepare them for what was to come. As for Yelena, she was in therapy. Thankfully, my connections with S.H.I.E.L.D. granted me the help Yelena needed, help I couldn't provide. After all, I was a demon in her eyes. Knock, knock. I heard someone say outside my office that someone was Fury. Come in, Fury. I inwardly chuckled as he opened the door. So, how have you been? He asked, taking a seat on my imported Italian chair. Good, working on my company and other little projects, I replied with a smile. I need a favor. He eventually said, his one good eye giving a long scrutinizing look. Sure, I am here to help. I nodded, giving him the green to proceed. I need you to steal some data from a very particular individual. Fury replied, handing me a file with a name in bold letters. William Stryker. Isn't he a government operative? I asked, my eyes on the file. He is. He nodded. But I have my suspicions the guy is doing some shady stuff. Stuff, I want to know, and considering you already have a record of stealing from the government and getting away with it, well, I knew you were the man for the job. I eyed Fury for a brief moment before I started chuckling. Since when? A month after you did your thing. He replied with a chuckle. I mean, you stole the government's greatest treasure, at least one of them, I was bound to find out. And you are not arresting me, how kind of you. I chuckled. Bitch, I am not suicidal. Besides, the government is dumb as fuck. So much potential, yet they hide it on a bunker, at least in your hands, I get something out of it. He replied. I honestly thought if you did find out, you would be a bit angrier, I admitted. I can see why you thought that. He chuckled, but considering all the good you have done for the world with Hydra's elimination, and the Red Rooms, well, I think S.H.I.E.L.D. can look the other way with a crime of two. I mean, the only ones you are hurting are the dumbass motherfuckers that thought hiding one of our greatest weapons was the best way to use it. Fair enough. I chuckled. So, what do you want me to do with this, guy? I pointed at the file. Stryker is a possible threat. Our sources say he's been trying to get economic support for his little projects outside the USA, and while normally, we wouldn't care, he has been seen talking with the enemy. He replied with a sigh. Let me guess, he got out of hand, I said. His hate for mutants is a problematic situation. At first, S.H.I.E.L.D. allowed his little projects to go on, for, in reality, we needed a way to stop mutants should they rise against us, but now, well, his projects are no longer aligned with S.H.I.E.L.D.'s interests. He nodded. And what do you want me to do? I asked. Capture him, alive if possible. He replied. Why me, though? I understand the importance of this mission, but I'm sure a few agents could do just fine. I inquired. Because of this. He said, putting a small device on my desk, one that started to show a video, where a dozen agents were killed by no other than Sabretooth himself. We believe he has more mutants under him, which is why you are our best bet. I see. I sighed as a blue block of text appeared in front of me. New quest created, The Hunt for Project X. William Stryker is desperate, he wants to wipe all mutants out of existence and will stop at nothing to obtain such a goal. Objectives: you must capture Stryker alive if possible. Bonus objectives: capture Sabretooth, capture Weapon X subjects. Rewards: Weapon X research data, Abraham Cornelius Super Soldier research data, 25.000.000 EXP. Failure equals possible death, capture. Accept, yes or no? So, are you in? Fury asked. Yes I am. I nodded, the rewards were certainly interesting. Natasha Romanov POV. Alex Walker was a weird man, his daughter was weird too, but I guess I was okay with that. They know about me, they know about my past, and yet, they welcome me. It feels strange. I do miss Alexei and Milena from time to time. Well, rather, I miss the fake life we had in Ohio, but as cruel as it sounds, being free outweighs my sentimentalism. I was still getting training, this time from S.H.I.E.L.D., but it was not forced. I was free to live a life, to not be a slave, though perhaps that was a fictitious sentiment. Perhaps I was yet to be free, who knew? But, at least I was freer now. Nat, let's play something. Emily, the daughter of my warden, said in a rather happy tone. I couldn't help myself but envy her. We both had a similar upbringing, we were both shoved into another's life, we both had parents that were not our own, but unlike me, her pretend parent actually cared for her, he actually loved her enough to give her more than she was supposed to have, he actually loved her enough to become her real dad, he loved her enough to turn a lie into a reality. It was a bitter sentiment that ate me away at times. Why didn't Alexei and Milena love me as much as Alex loves Emily? Why was she so lucky, when I never had any luck? I knew it was childish, but who could really blame me? Sure. I nodded. Emily was not to blame for my luck. In the end, I was rescued, so perhaps my luck was turning for the better. According to Fury's file, Stryker was somewhere in Africa, hiding while he tried to make deals with some African warlords in exchange for monetary assistance for his little projects. The problem now was, Africa was massive, so I had to update my search parameters to find him with my satellite, which took an hour, in which I focused solely on finding him. Once I had located Stryker somewhere near the border across the sea, well, I opened a portal nearby to assess the situation, and by nearby, I mean a few 100 miles away from him. If this guy really had Sabretooth, being near him would give away everything, with his super sense and all. Anyway, a few 100 miles away from them, I started to focus on the enemies around him as I looked over my skill list. Let's see how many enemies there are and plan accordingly. Stats. Name equals Alex Walker. Title equals The Gamer. Occupation equals Scientist. Level equals 162. EXP equals 15735/3945123. HP equals 255.000/255.000. MP equals 220.200/220.200. STR equals 800, plus 520, equals 1320. VIT equals 800. Definite equals 725. DEX equals 789. Int equals 750. Char equals 351. Whiz equals 500. Will equals 452. Per equals 445. LUK equals 369. Stat points equals 250. Money, 8.548.142.752. Tilde STR perks tilde. Strength of the Chosen, 50, equals it boosts your strength permanently by 5%. It stacks with other buffs. Force of 1,000, 200, equals it boosts your strength permanently by 20%. It stacks with other buffs. Might of Heracles, 800, equals it boosts your strength permanently by 40%. It stacks with other buffs. Total perk buff equals 65% STR. Tilde VIT perks tilde. Life of the Willing, 50, equals the user regenerates 1.5% of his maximum health every 5 seconds. It stacks with other health regeneration based buffs equals 3825 HP every 5 seconds. The Blessing of Persephone, 200, equals the user regenerates 5.5% of his maximum health every 5 seconds. It stacks with other health regeneration based buffs equals 14025 HP every 5 seconds. The perseverance of the gods. 800 equals the user regenerates 10.5% of his maximum health every 5 seconds. It stacks with other health regeneration based buffs equals 26775 HP every 5 seconds. Total perk regen equals 17.5% HP every 5 seconds for 44625 HP, or 3.5% HP every second for 8925 HP. Tilde definite perks tilde. Stone or skin. 50 equals the user takes 5% reduced damage from every instance of physical damage. The user also takes 2% reduced damage from every instance of magical damage. It stacks with other definite buffs. One Man Fortress, 200, equals the user takes 15% reduced damage from every instance of physical damage. The user also takes 8% reduced damage from every instance of magical damage. It stacks with other definite buffs. Total definite buff equals 20% mitigation of physical damage and 10% mitigation of magical damage. Tilde dex perks tilde. Perks require not only the user to have the required amount of stat points to unlock but a certain experience. Before dawn equals locked. Momentum equals locked. I really need to figure out how to unlock the other perks. I hummed, closing my perk window. So far, I only had the perks for will, STR, and definite. Anyway, with what I have, I think I should be okay as long as I don't do something stupid. I sighed, opening my map to check how things were moving with Striker. Nevertheless, I still needed to get closer. While I could see the red dots that represented Striker and his people, I couldn't see levels or who was with him beyond Sabretooth. Sabretooth alone was something to worry about, but what about the rest? I needed to know before moving forward, lest I wanted to be overwhelmed in numbers, or in the best case scenario, lose the element of surprise. The problem was, I had no idea how far Sabretooth's senses extended. The movies were never clear, nor were the comics, which made approaching Striker all the more difficult. Unless I used bait. If Sabretooth was really in charge of making sure Striker didn't kick the bucket, then he would be at all times alert, which means, no matter who approaches his range of detection, he will react. Meaning, I needed a sacrifice to determine his range of detection. The question now was, where to find said sacrifice? I suppose I could few warlords and throw them into the fray, each one at a different distance. Eventually, one of them will trigger Sabretooth and will give me the information I need to approach accordingly. I hummed, thinking how to kidnap the sacrificial warlords without getting my scent on them. Striker POV. Soon the world would see the error of its way. Striker. She felt someone. Victor said as he came into my tent. Where? I asked. A few 100 miles away, close to the coast, Victor growled, grinning. Is this unknown a threat? I asked. She says whoever it is, he or she is powerful. Victor grinned, filled with excitement. Get the team then. I ordered. What are our orders? Victor asked. Capture this unknown, we after all need more soldiers. I answered. Gladly. Victor smirked as he walked out of my tent. Alive, Victor, I want this unknown alive. With him it was better to confirm. You take the fun out of hunting. Victor shouted in an annoyed tone. Alex Walker POV. As I planned who to kidnap, I felt something, a feeling of uneasiness creeping up my spine. A new skill has been created by an specific action equals extra awareness. Extra awareness LV1 equals whenever someone or something is looking at you, You feel unease and can't relax. This effect of uneasiness won't go away until whoever it's watching you stops. Well, there goes the element of surprise. I chuckled. Whoever was watching me was probably working with Stryker. That or the watcher, but I doubt he is currently looking at me. Or that I can detect him, to be honest. Well, I guess it was time to move. With portals and a bit of creativity I might not even need to fight. Perks explanation have been updated. For the perks to be unlocked you need not only to have the stats required for said perk but accomplish something related to said perk. Like the will perks, he unlocked all thanks to the torture he received. Some perks are harder to obtain than others. With the new skill that had been created out of nowhere telling me I was being watched, I started to move as I formulated a plan to capture Stryker and his colleagues. According to my map, only one of the many red dots surrounding Stryker was on the move. If I had to take a guess, that one moving enemy was Sabretooth. The question now was how to deal with him. His regeneration was undoubtedly a problem. I suppose I could out-damage his regeneration, I muttered as I stopped moving in front of a clearing full of animals that looked at me in fright. I had to admit, Africa was beautiful. The animals, the relatively clean air, the animals, it was really a shame I was always here for business, not for pleasure. Taking a deep breath, I opened a portal to a place nearby the moving red dot, and after passing through the portal, took a seat on a rock, waiting for Sabretooth to arrive. It was a shame, really, of all the enemies I ever expected to face, Sabretooth was one I didn't want to meet. Not because I was scared or anything, but because he was one of my favorites. Well, fuck it. I chuckled, looking at my map, which said he was around 130 meters away from me. Meaning I had at best a minute or so before I had to face the guy. So, it was time to list my options. For an enemy like him, his regeneration was a problem, but if the movies were anything to go by, drowning him would work just fine. But to drown him, I would have to immobilize him, maybe cut his arms and legs. There you are. Someone growled, that someone being Sabretooth. He sounded excited, thrilled to meet me, or rather to hunt me. I know where you are, hiding really makes no difference. I said, greeting the hiding beast with a smile as I stood up from the rock I had been sitting on. I suppose you are right. Sabretooth replied, jumping out of the shadows with a wild grin. Sabretooth LV 161. Well, this is new. Usually enemies are a few levels ahead of me, not on my level. So, is there any way you would let me go and capture Stryker? Sabretooth snorted, baring his teeth at me in a rather animalistic way. Time to die. I thought as much. I sighed, equipping my armor, similar level or not, I was not going to let the kitty cat scratch my body if I could do something about it. With a roar and a wild grin, Sabretooth charged at me. As I stood in place with a defensive stance, which allowed me to parry the hunter's first blow with my right arm. Surprised by the lack of damage with his attack, Sabretooth threw a flurry of attacks with his claws trying to rip my armor off, but with a bit of grace I took a step back, blocking each and every single attack. Countering by digging my claws into his abdomen. Unmoved by his bleeding stomach, Sabretooth jumped above me after, landing behind me with a feral growl, as his injuries started to heal at an alarming rate, and in the blink of an eye, his injuries were no more. This will be fun. He grinned, licking some of the blood I had drawn from him from his bare fingers. Please don't make this sexual. I replied, weirded out by his rather explicit excitement about this fight. Growling at my comment, Sabretooth ran at me on all fours, leaping midway like a tiger to its prey. But before he could reach me, I used my telekinesis to slam him to the ground, as I jumped above him, digging my hands into his spine. If there was something I had learned during my less than willing time on Hydra was how the human body worked, and immortal or not, Sabretooth was a human, meaning the entire mobility of his immortal body depended on his little spine. Hissing in pain, the hunter made an attempt to throw me off him, but my grip on his spine and my telekinesis made it so it was impossible for him to move. Under normal circumstances, you would have probably won this match. But to make a point, I cracked his spine, momentarily leaving him paralyzed. These are not normal circumstances, are they? I will kill you, he roared, as I withdrew my blooded hands from his spine. Maybe, but not today, I replied, opening a portal to one of my contain zones, which had been gracefully provided by S.H.I.E.L.D. See you later, I smiled, kicking the hunter into his prison. With Sabretooth out of the way, things were bound to be easier. Let's see where the others are, I muttered, looking at my map to see I was surrounded by 3 red dots. I told that animal to wait for us, I heard a rather feminine yet somewhat sadistic voice comment as she came into light. Kimura LV-149. You know him, he rarely listens, another feminine voice commented, as she came out of the shadows. Copycat LV-148. We will punish Sabretooth later, for now. Let us capture this subject. This time the one who spoke was a man, an armored man. Ajax LV-160. I hummed, looking at the 3, and then looking at the map. We all were a few miles away from Stryker, which meant I had no need to fight them. I just realized I do not need to fight your asses, so, by Tilda, I waved at them with a smile under my helmet as I opened a portal to where Stryker was, leaving the 3 hunters alone, rushing but failing to stop me. At the other side of the portal, I encountered Stryker sitting on a wooden chair with a wide welcoming smile on his face. I was waiting for you, he claimed, which made me feel uneasy. Surprises in this universe were a thing I was used to, but this was unsettling, for the last thing I expected was encountering Stryker with a calm demeanor sitting on a timber chair with a broad welcoming smile on his face. Stryker LV-31. I was waiting for you, he smiled, which made me feel all the more uneasy. As a general rule, an enemy welcoming you to his lair is never a good thing, not like this. I looked at him, trying to formulate a response. As I inspected my surroundings, he had to have a trap, something. I see, I replied. With a grin, Stryker began to clap as he stood up from his chair. I must admit, I had my doubts as to who you were when Victor told me an enemy was nearby. But, seeing as you are here, he smiled. Well, I am glad I was correct. I had to admit, I was lost in this rather bizarre scenario. I mean, he was happy I was here. In fact, he seemed delighted. I think this is the first time I see someone so happy to be captured, I replied, eyeing the minimap every now and then. He had to have a trap, an enemy powerful enough to give him this piece, something. Well, I am a realistic man. Stryker chuckled. Besides, you won't capture me. Your compliance is not a factor on this. I snorted, walking towards him, ready to end this mission once and for all, when all of a sudden, he tossed a file at me. Read that. He smiled, walking towards a small fridge on the ground. And after that, we can talk about my capture. I looked at the file and froze. It was a S.H.I.E.L.D. file about me. I see now, I chuckled, grabbing the file with a sigh. This file is supposed to make me change sides, right? In a way. Stryker nodded. I looked at the file again, and I started to read the information within the file with a sigh. I had to admit, I was curious about what could be within the file that could make Stryker think I would switch sides. I was, to say something, skeptical about the whole thing. However, soon enough, I found out why he was so sure of this as I read the file more and more, beginning to finally understand why Stryker was giving me this. The file was nothing more than a contingency plan to stop me should I become evil. It went into great detail how Emily was my main emotional weakness, and how exploiting her would bring me to my knees. S.H.I.E.L.D. is not your ally. Stryker began, but before he could continue, I started to laugh. You find that file amusing? This. I waved the file at him, burning the thing down with my manner. Nah, it annoys me a bit, sure, but otherwise, I'm okay with it. I chuckled. They are planning ways to kill you, and you laugh. Stryker replied. S.H.I.E.L.D. is free to plan, just like I am. I winked. Besides, this is just the report of a random agent stating the obvious. Which is? Stryker inquired, his eyes on me. That a father's weakness is his child. I smiled under my helmet. I had a feeling you would react this way. Again, Stryker smiled, and once again, I felt uneasy. Enough, I stated, pulling his body towards me with telekinesis. I don't know what game you are playing, but I ain't playing these games. Good. He grinned. Even at my mercy, he was confident, but of what? If the file was not enough, what was his actual plan? Well, bye. I sighed, my patience running thin, as I opened a portal to throw him into Fury's office, but before I could do that, a magical blast of eldritch energy blasted me into the ground. Took you long enough, Stryker commented. We had to make some preparations. I heard someone reply. Brushing off the dirt of my armor, I stood up as I looked to see who had struck me down with eldritch magic, only to find a group of women flying in literal brooms above me. The first woman to the left was a blonde beauty that had what I like to call the no-no eyes, meaning her eyes gave you a feeling of uncertainty, like she would stab a man mid-fuck for what he said 2 years ago. Adthalaman LV 151. The one in the middle looked innocent, inviting, like a trap waiting to strike its prey. It was unsettling, though this one was a brunette, unlike the one to the left. Roithazlaman LV 149. The last one was a nation beauty, her pristine skin and exotic charm vibrating with her rather revealing clothes. She looked both innocent and dangerous at the same time. Permftelaman LV 150. The Laman Coven, Stryker said, his index finger pointing at them with a cocky smile. They are my plan to you. Those the Ancient One knows you work for him. I said, cracking my neck. Foolish boy. They hissed. We do not answer to that sorceress, for we are witches. Witches, huh? I wonder if they are related to the witch that at one point will try to steal the Dark Scepter from the Ancient One in the future. But you answer to a man with no powers or magic, good to know. I chuckled. Laugh while you can, little sorcerer. Roithas grinned. Soon, we will be the ones laughing. Okay, well, time to go, I muttered, considering these three were around my level, and the enemies around the camp and those who I had left in the middle of nowhere were drawing near. I would soon be outmatched in numbers at least, so it was time to do what people call a tactical retreat. However, as I tried to open a portal, nothing happened. It felt like something was blocking my magic altogether. Runes, and a claimed space, the nightmare of every magic caster, don't you think? Permfty winked, flying towards me in a rather seductive manner. You are powerless here. Runes, this bastard was buying time, meaning the witches were otherwise occupied creating a runic space to block all but their magic. Well fuck, Striker just outplayed me. You learn a lot from videos and such. Striker grinned as Ajax, Copycat and Kimura arrived, walking towards him all with smiles on their faces. I knew S.H.I.E.L.D. would eventually send you, so I invested a lot of time and money into hiring these resourceful witches. Well, fuck. I sighed, it seemed like I would have to get out of this with my hands and my hands only. Suddenly I'm glad I have an almost indestructible set of armor protecting me. I feel like I'm about to get a lot of hits today. Surprises in this universe were a thing I was used to, but this was unsettling, for the last thing I expected was encountering Striker with a calm demeanor sitting on a timber chair with a broad welcoming smile on his face. Striker LV31. I was waiting for you. He smiled, which made me feel all the more uneasy. As a general rule, an enemy welcoming you to his lair is never a good thing, not like this. I looked at him, trying to formulate a response. As I inspected my surroundings, he had to have a trap, something. I see, I replied. With a grin, Striker began to clap as he stood up from his chair. I must admit, I had my doubts as to who you were when Victor told me an enemy was nearby. But, seeing as you are here. He smiled. Well, I am glad I was correct. I had to admit, I was lost in this rather bizarre scenario. I mean, he was happy I was here. In fact, he seemed delighted. I think this is the first time I see someone so happy to be captured, I replied, eyeing the minimap every now and then. He had to have a trap, an enemy powerful enough to give him this piece, something. Well, I am a realistic man. Striker chuckled. Besides, you won't capture me. Your compliance is not a factor on this. I snorted, walking towards him, ready to end this mission once and for all, when all of a sudden, he tossed a file at me. Read that. He smiled, walking towards a small fridge on the ground. And after that, we can talk about my capture. I looked at the file and froze. It was a S.H.I.E.L.D. file about me. I see now. I chuckled, grabbing the file with a sigh. This file is supposed to make me change sides, right? In a way. Striker nodded. I looked at the file again, and I started to read the information within the file with a sigh. I had to admit, I was curious about what could be within the file that could make Striker think I would switch sides. I was, to say something, skeptical about the whole thing. However, soon enough, I found out why he was so sure of this as I read the file more and more, beginning to finally understand why Striker was giving me this. The file was nothing more than a contingency plan to stop me should I become evil. It went into great detail how Emily was my main emotional weakness, and how exploiting her would bring me to my knees. S.H.I.E.L.D. is not your ally. Striker began, but before he could continue, I started to laugh. You find that file amusing? This. I waved the file at him, burning the thing down with my mana. Nah, it annoys me a bit, sure, but otherwise, I'm okay with it. I chuckled. They are planning ways to kill you, and you laugh. Striker replied. S.H.I.E.L.D. is free to plan, just like I am. I winked. Besides, this is just the report of a random agent stating the obvious. Which is? Striker inquired, his eyes on me. That a father's weakness is his child. I smiled under my helmet. I had a feeling you would react this way. Again, Striker smiled, and once again, I felt uneasy. Enough, I stated, pulling his body towards me with telekinesis. I don't know what game you are playing, but I ain't playing these games. Good. He grinned. Even at my mercy, he was confident, But of what, if the file was not enough, what was his actual plan? Well, I sighed, my patience running thin, as I opened a portal to throw him into Fury's office, but before I could do that, a magical blast of eldritch energy blasted me into the ground. Took you long enough, Stryker commented. We had to make some preparations. I heard someone reply. Brushing off the dirt of my armor, I stood up as I looked to see who had struck me down with eldritch magic, only to find a group of women flying in literal brooms above me. The first woman to the left was a blonde beauty that had what I like to call the no-no eyes, meaning her eyes gave you a feeling of uncertainty, like she would stab a man mid-fuck for what he said 2 years ago. Adthalaman LV 151. The one in the middle looked innocent, inviting, like a trap waiting to strike its prey. It was unsettling, though this one was a brunette, unlike the one to the left. Roithazlaman LV 149. The last one was an Asian beauty, her pristine skin and exotic charm vibrating with her rather revealing clothes. She looked both innocent and dangerous at the same time. Permftelaman LV 150. The Laman Coven, Stryker said, his index finger pointing at them with a cocky smile. They are my plan to you. Those the Ancient One knows you work for him. I said, cracking my neck. Foolish boy. Adthay hissed. We do not answer to that sorceress, for we are witches. Witches, huh? I wonder if they are related to the witch that at one point will try to steal the Dark Scepter from the Ancient One in the future. But you answer to a man with no powers or magic, good to know. I chuckled. Laugh while you can, little sorcerer. Roithas grinned. Soon, we will be the ones laughing. Okay, well, time to go, I muttered, considering these three were around my level, and the enemies around the camp and those who I had left in the middle of nowhere were drawing near. I would soon be outmatched in numbers at least, so it was time to do what people call a tactical retreat. However, as I tried to open a portal, nothing happened. It felt like something was blocking my magic altogether. Runes, and a claimed space, the nightmare of every magic caster, don't you think? Permfty winked, flying towards me in a rather seductive manner. You are powerless here. Runes. This bastard was buying time, meaning the witches were otherwise occupied creating a runic space to block all but their magic. Well fuck, Stryker just outplayed me. You learn a lot from videos and such. Stryker grinned as Ajax, Copycat and Kimura arrived, walking towards him all with smiles on their faces. I knew S.H.I.E.L.D. would eventually send you, so I invested a lot of time and money into hiring these resourceful witches. Well, fuck. I sighed, it seemed like I would have to get out of this with my hands and my hands only. Suddenly I'm glad I have an almost indestructible set of armor protecting me. I feel like I'm about to get a lot of hits today. Alex Walker POV. I stared in shock as Copycat's husk of a body lay on the ground. I had no idea what had happened or how it had happened. 1 second, I was about to fight her, the next she transformed into me, and then, she died. It was all so fast, so sudden, and so frightening that I didn't know what to think. What struck me the most was not just the way she died but her screams for mercy. They were screams of pure and utter fear. By the time I managed to come out of my state of shock, the camp, once filled with soldiers and others, was empty, with dozens of red dots fading away on the minimap. And the truth was, I had no energy to pursue them, emotionally speaking. Quest completed, the hunt for project. Rewards, Weapon X research data, Abraham Cornelius Super Soldier research data, 25.000.000 EXP. By killing Stryker and not capturing some ex-subjects, some rewards have been eliminated. With an ironic laugh, I sighed, sitting down on the ground. It made sense. I had killed Stryker and eliminated almost everyone I was supposed to capture. With an exhausted sigh, I opened a portal to Fury's office, just noticing that my magic was no longer being blocked. I guess the witches decided to live to fight another day, I commented. Fury, upon seeing me enter his office, smiled. I wasn't expecting you today. I finished doing what you asked me to do, I said, getting straight to the point. Fury, being who he was, read the underlying subtext of my expression. I'll take care of cleaning this up, the super spy declared. Okay, I replied, opening a portal to my house. I needed a bath and a nap to erase some of what I experienced today. Killing people was already usual for me, torturing the same. But how Copycat died, to see her vomit her whole being, her organs, her bones, her everything, I wasn't totally prepared for that. After a hot bath and a 2-hour nap, I got ready to pick up Natasha and Emily from school as I had promised them a week ago. Daddy, Emily said, getting into the car with a smile, followed by Natasha. Mr. Walker. Natasha greeted me with considerably less enthusiasm compared to Emily. How was your day, girls? I asked as they put on their seat belts. Well, I got an A and on my math test, Emily replied proudly, showing off her test. Congratulations. I smile at her, giving her a kiss on the forehead. My day was, pretty normal, Natasha said with just the hint of a smile. Well, since you both had a normal day full of routine, who wants ice cream to celebrate? I smiled, glancing sideways at Natasha as I started the car to leave the school. Yes, Emily replied, basically screaming. I wouldn't mind. Natasha smiled, looking at Emily. Okay, so, gelato, here we come, I declared enthusiastically. After a delicious ice cream-filled afternoon, Natasha and Emily went to their respective after-school classes, Emily with the Ancient One, or Bald Granny as she calls her, and Natasha with a pair of former S.H.I.E.L.D. agents I had hired to teach her how to fight. Which left me alone, with not much to do. Hank was managing the company, the girls were busy, and I didn't want to do dungeons at the moment. I guess I can stick to my super soldier serum project for the time being, I said to myself as I sank into my $5,000 couch. I should stop spending on Italian stuff, they are too comfortable. Using all my willpower to get up from the couch, I walked to my lab, pulling out the data I had gained from my last mission out of my inventory. Abraham Cornelius super soldier data. Maybe with that, I would be able to finish deciphering the formula. Or maybe nothing would happen, the chances were unpredictable, but for my own sake, I would not stop until I succeeded. I mean, Russia succeeded, Hydra succeeded, it would be sad if I was the only one that didn't. Absorbing the data I had obtained. So many of the questions and problems I had had so far with the formula came to an end. But even so, the formula was still not clear, but now, unlike before, I could see more of the picture, the image, the painting of the formula in its splendor. I had to admit, Abraham Cornelius was a genius. His research had saved me a couple of years on my side, to the point that I could almost taste the complete formula, I could feel it brushing against my fingertips. And to think that a single scientist managed to create this complex formula, one I was still struggling to decode, but he simply created during such a sad technological time, and during the WW2 to add salt to the injury, geniuses like him were 1 in a billion. Well, time not to sleep to see if I make progress on anything, I said with a renewed enthusiasm. With this leap of information, I felt I was closer to my goal. Meow. Goose meowed, startling me a little. "What are you doing here?" I said, grabbing the cat off the floor. "You ate my back door again, didn't you?" Goose purred, looking proud that she had eaten my back door. "Goose, that's bad. I've already changed 47 doors this month," I said with a laugh. Goose simply purred louder, looking even more proud than before, as if smiling at the number of doors she had devoured this month only. In the end, alien or not, a cat was a cat. "Let's go before you start throwing up door pummels on my lab." I chuckled, walking out of the lab with Goose on my arms, who continued to purr at my touch. Maybe I could try and feed her more tuna. Perhaps if I doubled her rations of premium exported tuna, she would stop eating my lab doors. Who am I kidding? She just hates my lab. Is the only room in the house that is always closed, and cats have a thing for closed rooms, they just can't accept them being closed. It had been a month since my last mission with Fury, and during these last 30 days, I had focused on my lab work, but still, the vibrant memories of Copycat and her death haunted me in the darkest corners of my subconscious. I didn't understand why death was something I had already seen in large numbers, to the point that I no longer saw any difference between slaughtering animals for food or killing a human to complete my goals. Her death, although brutal and painful, shouldn't affect me. What bothered me was not her death as such, it was her look of dread after transforming into me, after trying to use my powers against me. Her screams for mercy. I had to be honest with myself. What really kept Copycat's last moments on Earth in my mind was the doubt she had awakened in me. Where did my powers come from? I wasn't so blind not to notice similarities in what happened to Copycat and what happened to Betelgeuse when he tried to possess Subaru. And even though my only sample comparison came from an anime, it was the only thing that made sense to me. Either that or my immunity to psychic attacks killed her. But I really didn't have much to go on. I had no idea if Copycat's power was psychic in nature, never read much about her. All I knew was that she was like Mystique, but somewhat better. Maybe I just needed to focus on my work even more. Taking a deep breath, I turned on the lights in my lab and began to work, when suddenly, I noticed something. 2 red dots were currently approaching my house. By the looks of it, they were roughly 4 miles away from the neighborhood. I don't get a day off. I sighed, opening a portal to my kitchen to make a sandwich, considering I had like 10 minutes before they were dangerously close. "Care to make me one?" Natasha said as she walked into the kitchen with a small smile on her face. Little by little, she was warming up to me. With Emily on the other hand, they were super tight, like real sisters. It's surprising how fast Emily manages to capture the hearts of others. "Sure." I nodded. "Extra ham on mine, I am a growing young lady after all." Natasha grinned. I chuckled. "Dad," was the last thing I heard before Emily tackled with a portal hug, which is basically her opening a portal behind me to avoid possible escapes. Not sure why I would never deny her a hug. "Sup champ?" I smiled, ruffling her hair. "Want a sandwich?" "Yes, I do." Emily nodded, jumping off me to sit beside Natasha. "Extra cheese and lettuce." "Coming right up." I nodded. Moments like this really take a huge weight out of me. Who would have thought I would come to crave normality? "Princess Goose also wants one, but with tuna," Emily said. "Princess Goose?" I raised an eyebrow at that as I turned around to face Emily, just to see her and Goose with a cat-sized tiara on her head. "How?" "I made it," Emily replied proudly. "Once again, how?" I asked as Natasha started to giggle under her breath. With magic. Emily grinned. Meow. Goose purred, her chest puffing proudly. She obviously liked the tiara. I also made her a dress, but I'm still trying to convince her to let me put it on her. Emily pouted. I'm sure Goose will eventually let you dress her up, I replied, getting a small narrow glare from Goose. Oops, I mean, Princess Goose. At this, she purred. She was really getting into her new role. I also made Nat a tiara, but she refuses to wear it in public. Emily pouted, her eyes narrowing as she looked at Natasha. I have a reputation to uphold. Natasha defended with a small smile. Kids think I'm the tough girl, can't tarnish that. Princesses are tough. Emily defended, with Goose nodding at her side. Okay. Enough about that, let's eat. I chuckled, giving the girls their sandwiches, extra cheese and lettuce for Emily, and extra ham for Nat. Meow. Goose complained. I apologize, Your Highness. I bowed with a smile, giving her her tuna sandwich. After giving the girls and Her Royal Highness their sandwiches, I teleported to where the red dots currently were, a 2-star cheap motel. Apparently, they change course to the closest motel to camp the night. I am very insulted, now they don't even pay my enemies good hotels, but our motels. I chuckled, kicking the door to their room open. When I kicked the door of the STD farm known as the Owly Motel, I expected many things, 1 burning my boots after finishing the enemies, 2 rats, maybe. But Alexei and Milena were not something I expected. Sir, this is our room, Milena said as Alexei approached her, looking at me with a warm smile. Oh yeah, he didn't know how I looked. Didn't I impale you? I asked, pointing to his stomach. I mean, he looked fine, fucking super soldier cheat. What happened next took 2 seconds at best, 1 for them to realize who I was and 2 for them to draw their weapons. Yeah, not gonna fight anyone in STD Villa, I stated, pushing them to the wall with my telekinesis. We came here to talk. Milena exclaimed. And the guns were your icebreaker. I snorted. And I thought I was bad at socializing. It was in case we needed to defend ourselves, Alexei added. I would have believed that if it wasn't for the fact you 2 aimed your guns at me after I said hi. I rolled my eyes. Then again, I would have aimed at me too, I am dangerous after all. We truly just want to talk, Milena repeated. Then let's. I smiled, tightening their hold. After all, there was more than one way to talk. After capturing Alexei and Milena, I transported them to one of my technically inescapable prisons, the same prison I was using to keep Sabretooth out of my life. Then, as a good host, I allowed them to explain why they had come to New York, or more specifically, why they wanted to talk to me. Alexei was the first to start talking, telling me that I was right, that he was a coward. Followed by Milena saying that it took her a while to realize she loved Natasha and Yelena more than her own country, that now she understood why the Red Room castrated them. I could see in their eyes that they were not lying to me. Yelena misses you guys, I said with a sigh. Natasha does too, but she is mature enough to understand it all. I could see the sorrow in their eyes, the shame, but even so, even knowing that they were not lying to me, I was not going to trust them, I couldn't. But I won't let any of you go near them, I added with a stern look on my face. I understand. Milena croaked, tears coursing down her cheeks one after the other. I understand that you don't trust us, but here we are, we betrayed our country for them. Alexei exclaimed pleadingly. You betrayed your country. I laughed, pushing the man against the wall in anger. They trusted you, they loved you, they still do, and you saw them as nothing more than objects to be used, as stones to be used to cement your glory. I know, Alexei replied without looking at me in the eyes, his whole body in a submissive state of acceptance, not a single muscle tense. In other words, he was ready to let me kill him without even trying to stop me. We'll do anything, Milena said, looking into my eyes as I held Alexei against the wall. But let us be a part of their lives. Taking a deep breath, I let go of Alexei. A small part of me wanted to give them a chance. I really wanted to believe they would not hurt them, but how could I trust them? How could I put Nat and Yelena on this ship again? Anything? I asked, looking into her eyes. Yes, Milena replied. I might regret this in the future, but I would give them a chance to start over. If you hurt them, if you breathe out of line, if you blink without telling me about it, I will find you, and I will kill you, but not without making the two of you suffer. Are you giving us a chance? Alexei muttered. Yes. I nodded with a sigh, rubbing my temples. You two will work for me, and in exchange, you will get to be part of their lives, but keep this in mind. I will monitor your every move. We are traitors to our homeland, we have nothing but them anyways, Alexei muttered. And I don't care, I replied with a hiss. My only concern is keeping them safe, and that also includes their emotional safety. So, watch your moves. I don't give a flying fuck if you betrayed Santa on the North Pole, but what you do from now on. What would we do for you? Milena asked. You said we would work for you, but in what? More than not, eliminating organizations like the Red Room, I answered. Like you did with Hydra, Alexei added. Yes, I nodded. Though I am not sure they are gone, not completely, at best, they are a street gang now. Thank you, Milena said with sincerity. Thank you for this opportunity. Don't get too excited, I said, looking at them. I won't force the girls to do anything. Yelena could be the only daughter you two still have. With that said, I opened a portal to my house, but before I left them on their cell, I added one last bit. I will come back in a day or two to talk about our agreement. Enjoy the time to think. The first one I explained what had happened was Natasha, who seemed distressed at the idea. A part of her was happy, I could see that much, but another part was angry, afraid. You are free to give them a second chance, worry not, I will protect you if anything comes to happen, I said, hugging Nat. I don't want to go, Natasha mumbled into my chest. I could tell she was on the verge of crying. I want to stay here, but I don't want to lose Yelena. They won't be far away, heck, they will be next door, I said, patting her on the head. If you want to stay, you are free to do so. But, do you want me to stay? Natasha mumbled in a barely audible voice. What? I asked. Emily said you wanted her to stay, to be your daughter. Is it the same for me? Nat muttered, looking into my eyes. Do you want to be my daughter? I asked, looking at her in the eyes with a small smile. Because if you say yes, there is no turning back. Nat turned, her head looking down as she muttered something I couldn't quite hear. What? Yes, Nat said, this time a bit louder. I want to be part of your family, for real. I want to have what Emily has. I want to be loved by someone who would burn a country down for me. I love them, I do, but I want what Emily has, I deserve what Emily has. She finished with tears. Then welcome to the family. I hugged her. Who would have thought I would have 2 daughters by the age of 25? I'm a selfish person, aren't I? Nat muttered. No. I shook my head. You crave what every person craves, unconditional love. It's a human condition, and fortunately for you, I have plenty to give, I added with a smirk. Do I have to call you Dad now, or? Nat chuckled, using her shirt to clean the tears and snot off her face. I mean, you can take your time, I replied, scratching the back of my head. Emily took hers. You can do the same, I don't mind. I will be happy when you do it, but I won't force it to happen. Yelena will be happy with them. Nat sighed. And you will be happy here with me, I hope. I smiled. Like I said, all transactions are final. You have lost your freedom until your college graduation. I already am. Nat hugged me. 2 weeks after sharing the news with Natasha, I went to the prison where I had Milena and Alexei locked up. During those 2 weeks, I made arrangements to officially keep a very close eye on them and other things, such as Natasha's adoption. I have arranged everything for your arrival, I said, staring at them. Milena shifted slightly, looking at the floor uneasily. When can we see them? She asked, lifting her gaze. In a moment, I replied. Yelena is ready. And Nat? Alexei asked, stepping forward. She will stay with me, I said in a tone that left no room for debate. That's not what you promised us. Alexei growled, approaching me in an aggressive manner. Looking at the man in a detached manner, I said. Think very carefully about what you are going to do, Alexei, it may be the last thing you ever do. Milena, upon seeing this, moved in front of Alexei. Stop it. Natasha asked me to adopt her, I said, and I agreed. By all means, she is my daughter, and if you touch a hair on her head without my consent or hers, it will be the last thing you two ever do. Is she happy? Milena asked. Yes. I agreed. She hates us. Alexei asked, his voice a little broken. No, but she wants more. She wants to be loved like a father should love his daughter. I replied, and I'm willing to give her that. I understand. Milena smiled a smile of understanding but full of sorrow. I'm sorry for my outburst of anger. Alexei apologized. Sighing, I opened a portal to my living room. Come in, I said, waving my hand. Looking at the portal out of the corner of their eyes, Milena and Alexei took a deep breath and began to walk towards the portal with a bit of trepidation. I don't have all day, move it, I said this time with a louder tone. Seeing that I was getting annoyed, Alexei and Milena jumped through the portal, followed by me, who then closed the portal. In my living room, Natasha and Bucky were waiting for them, sitting on my couch. Nat. Milena smiled at the sight of Natasha. Milena. Natasha smiled back, though, in comparison, her smile was smaller and not as full of joy as Milena's. Hi, Alexei said, approaching Natasha to give her a hug, but before it could come, Bucky stopped him. One more step, and I'll slit your throat. Bucky threatened. It's okay, Bucky. Natasha smiled, hugging Bucky with a faint smile. Alexei, long time no see. Is it true you want to stay with him? Alexei said, pointing at me. Yes. Natasha smiled, looking at me. I will always love you, I hope you know that, Alexei said. Yes, but your love is not enough for me, Natasha replied. I know. Alexei nodded. Can I hug you? Milena said, entering the conversation. Yes. Natasha smiled, running over to Milena to give her a hug. He treats you well. Milena whispered. Yes. Natasha smiled. For the first time in my life, I feel wanted, desired, loved. He's a good man, a good father. I'm glad. Milena smiled. Can I hug you? Alexei said in a weak tone. Yes. Natasha smiled as I walked towards Bucky. If you breathe out of place, I'll kill you, Bucky commented. If I don't kill them first, I replied with a chuckle. We can hear them, Alexei commented. So? Bucky said. After the small reunion with Alexei, Milena, and Nat, we went to Yelena's room, and well, this reunion was a bit different. Unlike Natasha, who had some encountered feelings about them, Yelena was happy beyond comprehension. Which made me wonder, how long would that happiness last? I mean, part of the deal with them was that they had to tell Yelena the truth, how they were planning to enslave her, and such. I suppose soon enough, I would know. For now, I would keep an eye on them, which was an entire ordeal altogether. For one, I implanted a tracker inside their spine with the help of Fury, a tracker that also worked as a taser courtesy of Stark Industries, which would help in case they misbehaved. The tracker wasn't for me though, it was for Fury and Bucky to keep an eye on their every move, their rules. They were not allowed to leave the city, one step out of New York, and they would need speech therapy after the electric shock they would receive. 2 steps out of New York, they would need to learn how to use a wheelchair. 3 steps. They would need to learn how to communicate by blinks, and so. As for Nat, she seemed happy to be legally my daughter. She was a lot more expressive now, hugging me, smiling more. It was like she was waiting for a paper to say she was my daughter to open up. As for Emily, well, after I told her about Nat's adoption, well, I had to go to the doctor to get an ear exam. Her scream of joy was so loud I think she might have ruptured something inside. Things were going well. Alex, long time no see. Hank greeted me as I entered his office. I was starting to think you were dead. He chuckled. I was dealing with a lot of things, I admitted with a sigh, taking a seat. Well, you got here just in time. Hank smiled, giving me a folder. We have our first investor. Surprised by how fast he had managed to find an investor, I opened the folder he had handed me to see the project he had been working on during my absence and who had invested in it. The US government, the project. Clean energy. Clean energy? I asked. It was an idea I had from my own masterpiece, as you call it. He smiled. Okay. I smiled, now that I knew it was related to his PYM particles. Well, it was best if I didn't answer. It's okay, kid. Hank rolled his eyes. I know you're not interested in my PYM particles, so ask away. And so, I started to ask. I was quite interested how he came with the idea about clean energy thanks to his PYM particles. After settling Yelena in with her parents and leaving Fury in charge of them, I decided to take a trip to Switzerland with Emily, Natasha, and Bucky for a short getaway to break away from the monotony. Once in Switzerland, we took a cab to our hotel, and our vacations officially started. The girls wanted to go to the Matterhorn, and Bucky really didn't care where we went, so without any objection, we took the first train to the mountain with the intention of taking a few pictures the very next day, after our arrival. Do you think they will let us ski? Asked Natasha with a smile on her face as she looked at the scenery outside the train. I don't really know, I replied, since outside of my missions exterminating Hydra, I had never been here for pleasure. But it would be a waste of touristic cash if they didn't let anyone ski. If they do, Bucky replied. They have several areas designated for that, he added. How do you know that? Emily asked with an excited smile. I read it in the pamphlet, Bucky replied. showing said pamphlet. The seats have one each, he added. Confirming what he said, I looked under my seat, finding a pamphlet under it, which made me chuckle. I think I need to pay more attention, ha ha. I can't wait to ski, Natasha said with a wide smile. I always wanted to, but, you know. She sighed. Well, let's make this first time memorable. I smiled, ruffling her hair as I eyed the view outside the train through the window. It was really beautiful, breathtaking, a sight to behold. I wanna make a snowman, Emily exclaimed proudly, tackling into a hug. 3, 1 for you, 1 for me, and 1 for Nat. I can help and beat you by making mine faster, Natasha smirked. Emily gasped. Betrayer. Natasha winked, let us battle in a snowman sisterhood war. She grinned. I will vanquish thee. Emily giggled. As for me, well, I was smiling at the sight of the two getting along so well. It took us a few hours to reach the ski resort thingy, mostly because the girls stopped at every corner to take pictures and throw snowballs at me, which I could handle until Bucky joined, and well, I was at a disadvantage. After a few all-out wars of snow, where I drowned Bucky on snow more than once, we finally arrived at the ski resort. Now, here came the hard part. I had no freaking clue how to ski, meaning I was about to suck at it. I should have bought a book in skiing. Now Bucky will steal the spotlight. Now, before we go out and start skiing, I am legally bound to tell you, our gift store at the entrance has a book with clear instructions on how to ski. That's an odd legal clause, oddly specific. Why would books? Where is it? I rushed to the guide/guy that was here to make sure we didn't deviate from the safe path. The gift shop. The guide, whose name I hadn't bothered to learn, or ask, said. Yes. I nodded with a smile. Oh sir, there is no need to hurry. The guide smiled at me. We will have time to go there later. I will give you $200 to shut up and take me to the gift shop. I smiled at him, one of those smiles that said, shut up and do as I command. As I said, let's go. The guide smiled, guiding me to the gift shop, while Emily, Bucky, and Nat stared at me, wondering why I was so eager to go to the gift shop. In a way, I didn't need the guy to tell me where the gift shop was, with my map and all, but I had promised before coming here to detach from my powers for the week, to truly live the experience, reason why I was asking, and yes, I know rushing to the store to buy books about skiing to consume them goes against that, but I make the rules. Here we are. The guide smiled as I gave him the $200. Rushing to the book section, I grabbed 3 books about skiing, paid for them, and rushed to the bathroom to consume the books. I'm ready, I declared, kicking the bathroom door open. You didn't know how to ski, didn't you? Bucky grinned. I sighed, no. And you bought all those books to try and learn, right? Bucky asked. Yes, but enough about that, now I have the skiing skills of a dummy, according to the books. I shrugged. Where are the books anyway? Bucky asked. I burned them. I lied, rushing with the girls, Bucky and 404 error name not found guide back to the start. $14.28 I wasted on nothing. Here was Bucky looking like he was born with ski equipment, while I was barely better than the girls. Skiing for Dummies Volumes 1, 2, and 3, I will buy your company and fire everyone within. Don't feel sad, Daddy. Emily hugged me. We all suck together. I suppose we do. I chuckled. Talk for yourself. Natasha declared, full with determination. I will learn how to ski. I believe in you. I smiled. It's not that hard, all you need is balance, Bucky said, doing a fucking cartwheel as he turned around us. Are you showing off? I narrowed my eyes. Yes, I am. Bucky smiled as he continued to majestically ski around us. I chuckled, oh well, sooner or later I would learn. That was the nature of my power, it was never an if, but a when. We continued skiing for the next few hours as I passively leveled up my newfound skiing skill. I'm hungry, Emily said. Same here, Nat nodded. Bucky, take the girls back to the hotel, I want to stay a bit longer here, I said, tossing the man my credit card. Can you open us a portal? Bucky asked. No. Emily jumped. I'll do it. Oh right, she was now a proficient portal user. You heard the boss. I chuckled as Emily proceeded to open a portal for them to go back to the hotel room. I wonder if the hotel will wonder why they suddenly appear without going through the main entrance. Oh well, if push comes to shove, I'll buy the hotel. As Emily's portal closed, I continued skiing, finding that I really liked the feeling. It was relaxing, the cold air on my face, the sounds of nature around, it was all beautiful, it really was. I don't know how long I continued skiing, but eventually, I went off the safe zone, finding a cave, and in my childish curiosity, I stepped inside the cave, wondering if I would find a bear or something. I mean, I knew no wild earth animal could hurt me, maybe a giant squid could, I don't know, but a bear, or a wolf, heck no, which made this entirely safe mission fun in a childish way. However, inside the cave, I found nothing. It was empty, but as I was about to leave, I felt something, a pull, a magical pull, a very weak one, a very old one. Now, my completely safe mission had been upgraded to a somewhat dangerous mission. Caves and magic usually lead to intriguing scenarios. Using my knowledge of the Eldritch arts, I followed the magic signature. It felt like a candle about to go out, very old, and very weak, and very unfamiliar. Its magic didn't feel like the Eldritch arts, or like that of witches that attacked me, it was different. My search for this little ember of magic led me to a dead end, facing a freezing wall of rock and nothingness. But even then, I could feel it. Behind that rocky wall, the faint ember of magic was there, so I did what any responsible adult in my position would have done, I blasted the wall off. In retrospect, I should have considered the integrity of the cave as a whole and such, but I was having so much doing this, I forgot for a minute I could have brought the entire cave down on my ass. With the wall down, I now had access to a new section of the cave, which I entered, once again following the magical signature. Each step bringing me closer to the magic I was chasing until eventually, I reached another dead end, one that I was about to blow until I noticed the walls had writings. Nordic, by what little I could understand. Gatgateatska. I hummed, reading the runes out loud. From what I could understand, this was at one point a place of worship to the Norse gods, though I wonder why did they write open path to Asgard, were they trying to open a portal there? All of a sudden, the runes started to shine in a bright blue color as I cursed internally. I shouldn't have read these out loud. Checking my mana, I noticed a small portion of it was gone. Yep, definitely shouldn't have read those out loud. I sighed as magic started to engulf me. That's it for the video, guys. Hope you like the video. Like, share and subscribe. Also tell me in the comment section which kind of fanfiction you would like to watch next, or if you have a recommendation.